In those halcyon days of 2006, we were just beginning the insanity that was the 7th generation of home gaming consoles, an era marked by the insane sales of Nintendo's Wii and a marketplace that was otherwise dominated by the Xbox 360. Nestled very early on in the 360's launch cycle is a game that I would genuinely put as one of my favorites of all time. A slightly narrower category to take, but in the grand scheme of zombie-related video games, this one is absolutely my favorite. You know what it is. You read the title of this video after all and clicked on it, so there's no point in building tension like I do sometimes for some reason. It's Dead Rising. Dead Rising is one of Capcom's many great franchises, and its humble beginnings were as a console exclusive for the Xbox 360. If you're not aware, Dead Rising is a zombie game, one that I would say came out just a bit before that big zombie craze of the 2010s and beyond. Regardless, I'd say it's a totally unique game, even in the wake of Capcom's previous zombie-related franchise in Resident Evil. Before getting to the game proper, here's something about Dead Rising that I didn't know for a couple years, honestly. It has an attract mode. Yeah, a whole intro video where we follow a mother-daughter pair trying to escape Willamette. I forget sometimes that Dead Rising existed at the same time as old CRTs, where burn-in would be an issue, obviously. Though that also does remind me of something. Dead Rising used to have nigh unreadable text on those old TVs. It was just a giant blur, and this was an issue for reviewers back in the day, and obviously casual players too. Ah, the old days, where the problems were just so simple. Dead Rising casts you as hard-nosed photojournalist Frank West, who is currently en route to Willamette, Colorado, where he believes a big story is unfolding in this sleepy little town, alongside helicopter pilot Ed DeLuca, who eloquently sums up the entire place.
Willamette, Colorado. Population 53,594. Distinguishing characteristics? Jack shit.
But as Ed flies over the town proper, it becomes very obvious that something is terribly wrong. The National Guard is blocking off the area, and widespread acts of violence are occurring all throughout the streets. Violence that you get a bird's eye view of with the game's beginning segment here. You peer through the eye of Frank's trusty camera, which lets you familiarize yourself with the game's first mechanic, photography. Ed will sweep you over the town, getting you closer to the carnage and allowing you to snap pictures. Pics which grant you PP, or prestige points. Important, of course, but this will be fully discussed at a later time. Your photos are generally themed in under one of 5 categories, including brutality, drama, erotica, horror, and outtakes. Genre isn't particularly relevant, barring a few quests, but generally the more stuff you can cram into one photo, the more points you get regardless. Coolly, the photos you can take also pop up during the game's various loading screens. I can explain that one, I promise. At the end of this first segment, Frank asks Ed to send him down on top of the Willamette Parkview Mall, demanding that Ed return in 3 days' time at noon to pick him up. National Guard choppers in hot pursuit, Ed flies over the mall's helipad, and Frank leaps out of the chopper to begin his odyssey in Willamette. Right now, you might say, zombies in a mall? Well, that sounds awfully familiar. Perhaps even derivative of a certain legendary piece of zombie media in George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Well, fun fact, dear viewers, this is actually addressed right on the box art of the original Xbox 360 release. However, the Ham Arcade Group, holders of the Dead franchise rights at the time, tried to claim that Dead Rising was infringing on its copyright. This actually even escalated to a lawsuit, one that ended up getting dismissed because humans battling zombies in a mall was a wholly unprotectable concept. As a fan of both this game and Dawn of the Dead, I obviously have to agree with the judge here. Outside of zombies in a mall, Dead Rising really has zero similarities to that film. Back to the game though. Frank immediately runs into a rather mysterious looking fella by the name of Carlito. Some small talk is exchanged between the two before Frank heads inside the mall proper, quickly peeping the horror on a monitor in the security room. Frank hits the entrance plaza and is immediately elucidated on the current situation by a survivor named Ryan.
You looking to get yourself eaten alive by zombies?
What? Did you just say zombies?
Take a look out there. If those ain't zombies, what would you call them?
Yeah, it's fucking zombies. Not civil unrest, but the dead coming back to life and feasting on the flesh of the living. As the dead ripped through the town, many survivors have taken refuge in the mall, barricading the entrance so the dead are unable to get inside. Frank heads off to gather some more materials for the barricade, but runs afoul of an ornery old man.
Stop right there! Do you have any idea what you've done? Why did you summon me to this place? What are you planning?
Would you calm down? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Thankfully, though, outside that bit of awkwardness, the barricades hold, everyone inside is safe, and after 3 uneventful days of interviews, Frank breaks the story worldwide.
What are you thinking?
Okay, guys, how did none of you stop this elderly old woman from ruining everything? I mean, really. There are at least 3 able-bodied men right here, and counting out of cutscene survivors too, there's one guy that has a shotgun. He could have ended it right there. Zombies start flooding in, and a mysterious man urges any survivors to get up the stairs, quick! And so, you begin a battle through the horde, which will now give you the taste of the main course that Dead Rising has to offer gameplay-wise. So let us now take the time to go over all of that. At its very core, Dead Rising is a survival sandbox. You're dropped into this huge mall, one that houses all sorts of weapons, toys, food, tools, and just all sorts of random junk. Junk that, basically, if it's not nailed down, you can pick up and use as a weapon in your fight for survival. That bench right there? Go ahead, use it. Showerhead? Yeah, mate, go nuts. Cash register? Golf club? Pies? Yeah, it's all usable. Obviously, some weapons are far more effective than others. A bat is great for clearing crowds. Katanas are too. Guns are usable too. Regardless, feed your inner what-ifs. Get on that lawnmower and start shredding zombies. Clip them with hedge clippers. Send zombies clattering to the ground with a bowling ball. This sort of interactivity is the main draw of Dead Rising, and it's something the game does insanely well. Like, even down to the very fine details, which you might not even notice on a first play. Just to give off some random examples, zombies will pursue the hunk of meat item if it's left on the ground. They will slip on cooking oil if you bust a container of it on the ground in front of them. Paint will coat the zombies if you beat them with a paint can. This isn't even to mention the sheer interactivity of the world in general. Like, you can use a pan to club zombies, but you can also heat it up on a stove to inflict burn damage instead. You eat food to restore your health, of course. Cooking your food restores even more of your health if you take the time to do it. So many cool little small details and additional stuff like that. I'd like to direct everyone to a video that every Dead Rising fan has likely seen, and that's Crobcat's Dead Rising 1 versus Dead Rising 4. It goes over a lot of stuff like that. It'll blow your mind just how detailed this game was. Anyway, you haul ass to the security room, meeting up with the only 3 survivors left to your knowledge. Brad, Jesse, and mall employee Otis, who promptly welds the security door shut. Brad and Jesse aren't really forthcoming as to who they are and why they're in Willamette too, but Frank susses out their interest in the old man from Entrance Plaza and decides to follow Brad into the mall to try to get some more information out of him. On the rooftops, you encounter another of Dead Rising's most iconic mechanics, though this one not for a good reason. Here, you run into the game's first 2 survivors, Jeff and Natalie Myers, a couple that somehow got separated from each other on one rooftop. So you reunite them, get a nice little photo op from them hugging, and then you return them promptly to the safe house for some fat pee-pee. This is the predominant reason to rescue survivors from the mall, and will be making up a majority of the experience you can earn in-game. There are 48 total savable survivors that you can find over the course of Frank's 3-day adventure in Willamette. Typically, the location of a survivor will be relayed to you as a scoop by Otis via the transceiver he gives you at the start of the game, and he will never hesitate to call you at the worst possible time. Oh, Frank, Sonny, that was rude. Bro, I was getting stabbed like Inajiro Asanuma. Shut the fuck up. Some survivors will just be on the map and you'll stumble across them. Many will also be held by the other side of the coin in the game's bosses, called psychopaths. Only 8 of these survivors can exist on the map at a given time, so definitely try to rescue them when possible. Survivors are huge sacks of PP, and you can level up quite quickly off of them. This is, however, a tall order because of one major issue. Survivors are fucking stupid.
Life is pain! I hate—
Dead Rising survivors might possibly possess the worst AI for a companion character since that one dumb bitch in GoldenEye. Survivors are absurdly incompetent, will walk straight into the thickest swaths of zombies, will get stuck on any stray object in their way, and are not particularly adept at following even the basic order of following you. There are 2 ways to order your survivors around. You can spam, or you can mark a specific point on the map, and your survivors will slowly make their way there at a gradual pace. I would say the latter is the better option for escorting survivors. Hop into a new area, sprint to where you need to go, and then mark that new location and just run interference till everybody makes it there. Survivors themselves can be broken down into 3 types, I'd say. Normal, helpless, and disabled. Normal survivors are able to defend themselves if armed. They even are able to use these weapons sometimes. I mean, don't count on them being able to clear out masses of Zeds like you, but hey, it's better they can defend themselves somewhat versus not at all. Helpless survivors, well, able-bodied, are unable to wield weapons. Their only form of self-defense being a shove, which, not bad, admittedly. Helpless survivors you can generally also hold the hands of to make sure they stay close to you when that works, because the hand-holding is insanely easy to break in this game. Ironically, disabled survivors are the best kind of survivor in this game. These people are hurt, or drunk, and as a result cannot move at a normal pace. Frank can offer a shoulder or outright carry these survivors back to the safe house. These survivors are the best because they have no agency and rely entirely on you to save them. Even better, when you are carrying one of these survivors, you cannot be grabbed by zombies. You can get slapped, but not grabbed. Therefore, these are the best survivors in the game. The last noteworthy part of your hapless survivors is occasionally some of them will make a mundane little request of you, like asking for a bottle of wine to help relax everybody, or asking for a gun just in case they turn into a zombie. Doing these nets you some free PP, and the requests are typically really easy to fulfill, so there's really no reason not to do them. Also, occasionally some survivors will attempt to mutiny, taking an entire room of survivors with them. This is bad because come end of the game, you get bonus PP from how many survivors you've saved, so always put these fires out when you can. Survivors can also defect in the field, but this takes a lot of you hitting them around or pointing a gun at them for an extended period of time, so it's pretty easy to avoid, honestly. They can also die because, I mean, well, duh, but some survivors have unique death cutscenes that can trigger on their death. Decades of playing this game though, and I don't think I've actually triggered any of these once. Anyway, Frank heads out to the mall, but suddenly he hears something following him, and so he prepares to respond. And almost fucking clobbers Jessie, who is on her way to assist her partner, who is currently in trouble. Jessie's now sprained her ankle, meaning she'd be a liability out there, and so Frank offers to take her place, dropping this banger of a line.
How to use this?
Kinda. I've covered wars, you know.
And then it's off to the food court to provide backup for Brad. Upon arrival there, you're immediately greeted by gunfire via Brad and Carlito. The cutscene ends, and you're now thrust into your first boss fight. Now seems like a good time to talk about the boss fights, I won't lie. In Dead Rising, the bosses are referred to as psychopaths, and bar a few exceptions are typically people who have been pushed to a breaking point by the zombie outbreak and have reverted to a more feral form. These psychos include a very paranoid gun shop owner, a clown,
Stops, then the zombies come back, and that won't be any fun at all.
a Vietnam veteran having a breakdown,
You are nothing but a filthy communist.
an obese misogynistic cop lady,
What have we here? Looks like you lured another man in here, you little whore.
and more.
This is my stuff!
Psychos serve as your more challenging fights, since, well, zombies kind of stop being a huge threat after you level a bit. As the antithesis to zombies, psychos are pretty durable, tend to be incredibly fast-moving, and they hit like a fucking dump truck. They're a nice, decent challenge, until you mog at them and get the mini chainsaws, which cut through psychos like a chainsaw through butter. You also have some more rank-and-file psychos, just kind of normal humans that, while they pose a bigger threat than a zombie, they die much easier than the average psychopath do. The convicts count as this. Later on, you encounter cult members who count as the same. Oh, wait, fuck, I almost forgot something. I said that zombies weren't much of a threat, and while that's true, during the day, nighttime zombies are a bit of a different breed. Nighttime red-eyed zombies are way more aggressive, do more damage, and are just kind of dicks. I gotta give props to Capcom here. The basic zombie is a frightening foe, but if you're familiar with them, well, they're not that scary. And so Capcom gave them a new background, nighttime steroids, and also added a bunch of lunatics to help make things more spicy out there. This might sound like a tall order now, but as you battle these foes, save survivors, and take good pictures, you level up, becoming stronger in the process. I actually feel like Dead Rising's progression when it comes to leveling is fantastic. Leveling provides you with boosted stats for one. Your attacks and your throw strength get stronger, your speed goes up, you can take more damage, you can carry more things. You can also unlock a bevy of new melee attacks and skills which all help you to survive this nightmare, and just have more fun killing zombies. A lot of skills also have good utility too. Like for example, the knee drop lets you negate all fall damage. I'll give the game props for throwing in a zombie walk too. Perhaps this is a nice little reference to Shaun of the Dead, but it's just a fun little thing to add regardless, even if you get it at level 50. When you're leveling though, you really do feel like you're turning from some hapless dope caught in a bad situation to an incredibly deadly survivor who can easily dispatch any zombie or nutbar in his vicinity. Not even just that, as you play Dead Rising, your knowledge of the game's various secrets only grow. You'll find out where all the the secret submachine guns are. There's a katana on top of the shade of Colombian roastmasters, too. Knowing what foods to mix into the game's various mixed drinks is also great for your survival, especially in those early levels where a quick step can really get you where you need to be at a much faster pace than just your slow-ass walk. I will also add here that I genuinely like the survival side elements of Dead Rising 2. Static save points, which require you to think on when to save, is something that I do appreciate in these types of games. Also, near the start of the game, when your inventory slots are limited, you really do have to think about what to put in your inventory. How many weapons should I carry? What weapons should I carry? How many guns? How much food should I be bringing alongside me? Do I need weapons to arm potential survivors? Will it be worthwhile to carry a utility item like a book, which can boost certain item durability? You have a lot of options and stuff to debate with yourself as you navigate Willamette. The survival aspect of Dead Rising is also greatly enhanced by another of its unique features, that being the game's timer. You have 3 in-game days worth of time, which translates to about 2 hours real time to 1 in-game day, which obviously means you only have a limited amount of time each day to finish the main story cases and do any scoops that might get related to you. This also means you genuinely have to be smart about your time usage. Certain powerful weapons like shotguns and sniper rifles are only located in one part of the mall, North Plaza. If you find yourself in need of either, you will have to travel there, and if it's your first time, you'll also have to fight a boss. The best melee weapon in the game is the mini chainsaw, which is also only accessible in one area, Wonderland Plaza, where once again you need to fight a boss to acquire them. If you waste too much time, you can miss scoops, which provide a ton of PP, or even fail the main case if you mess around too much. That's not too big of a deal though, you can just keep playing for 3 days. This time management also bleeds down to engaging the zombies even. Do I find a way around this horde? Do my best to weave through them, or do I just punch through to save as much time as I can? The mind wobbles with all the stuff that you have to take into account here. Though I will say it is definitely very possible to save every survivor, clear every scoop, and still get the best ending if you know what you're doing, of course. Wrapping back around to the bosses, though, I love the bosses because they're a great shake-up from the normal enemies. Even better, every boss in the game is insanely over the top and tend to deliver their lines with a lot of gusto. I'd like to also compliment here that every boss also has a pretty banging theme to go alongside them, with the convicts obviously being the highlight. I think everybody knows Gone Guru at this point. I would also like to take a moment here to talk about the humor of Dead Rising. I consider Dead Rising to be a genuinely funny game. Perhaps not in the general sense of making jokes, but in terms of its tone, main characters' interactions with the world, and how crazy things actually get, it's a genuinely hilarious game. Frank is a straight man in a world that's gone completely mad. Dead Rising has a B-movie schlock as its plot, and this scenario is 100% played straight. There's no stupid wink wink nudge nudge horse shit. Even when Frank is dressed like this.
I mean, look, what did that woman do? This seems a little,
Shut your pie hole!
Frank being the straight man also lends itself well to the interactions with the game's various psychos. Frank often only be exasperated by them or just outright terrified by them. But regardless, Frank and the game in general maintain an aura of seriousness that's contrasted by the levity of how Frank is dressed like a total psychopath as he's doing all of this. Just as an example, I walked into a boss fight against the Hall family, a family that consists of Mad Lad Patriarch Roger, his oldest son Jack who takes after him, and the youngest son Thomas, who is actually quite hesitant to kill me, being that I'm human and not a zombie. I ran each of these dudes down with a mini chainsaw, all wearing a suit and a Servbot mask.
Over here!
Perhaps I'm the psycho here. Back to the story though, after providing backup for Brad, Frank manages to wring a little information out of the DHS agent by showing off a pic of the old man from Entrance Plaza, who seems to be of great interest to the duo. Frank and Brad then head to the Entrance Plaza where the old man, one Russell Barnaby, refuses their aid, only willing to come out if a safe evacuation is guaranteed. Back in the security room, the DHS agents are still unable to contact their command's HQ, but Frank kindly informs them that he has a helicopter on the way to pick him up in 3 days' time, which gives Brad and Jesse the leverage they need to negotiate with Barnaby. Unfortunately, in the intervening time, Carlito has grabbed the good doctor first, and once again, Brad and Frank head off to save him and battle Carlito once more. After a brief battle... Okay, Jesus Frank, good shots there. Brad is wounded, but Carlito is driven off, leaving our heroes to recover the doctor and bring his old ass back to the security office. Barnaby is unresponsive upon rescue, and an injured Brad unfortunately only gets worse as time grinds on. Frank thusly heads out into the mall to retrieve a first aid kit from the pharmacy and Sion's food and stuff. While there though, he runs afoul of the store manager, who is still holding down the fort for some reason.
This is my store! You came to vandalize my store! Huh? Not on my nuts!
I won't lie, guys. Stephen Chapman is my favorite Psycho in Dead Rising. Just a porky older gentleman broken by the outbreak, and so he's just decided to take his protection of the store to the logical extreme. I also love the little added detail of his name badge being a much younger version of himself. It really seals him as the perfect Psycho, on top of, you know, his amazing voice acting. Frank takes Chapman down,
Clean up! Register 6!
but he takes an interest in the girl that Chapman was holding captive. He recalls seeing her from the entrance plaza on day 1 and tries to talk to her. This doesn't go well, and this woman informs him that he is the cause of this nightmare because of what they did in Santa Cabeza before she storms off. Frank returns to the security room with the medkit, and thankfully Brad begins a full recovery.
I offered to help her, but she took off.
Can't really blame her for running from a guy with your looks.
Fuck you, Jesse. I'm out here busting my ass and you're just looking at the monitors. Frank name drops Santa Cabeza, which causes Barnaby to throw a conniption. He's open to spilling the beans, but Frank gets kicked out because he's trying to record the confession. Jesse kicks Frank out, and exasperated, he decides to seek another source of information. The mysterious girl from earlier, who he spots on the monitor going back to the same exact store. Frank hunts her down, and the two have a very civil discussion.
How much do you already know? Have you called for help?
Hold your horses, babe. I'm the one asking the questions here.
Isabella decides after such persuasion to enlighten Frank to the fact that the zombies were the USA's fault, but if he wants the full story, he's gonna have to talk to Carlito. You know, the guy who's tried to kill him twice now. Frank agrees, though, and the two agree to meet at a later time. Return to the security room once again, Barnaby has given his side of things. In his eyes, Carlito is nothing more than a terrorist involved in the thriving drug trade from Santa Cabeza, and this attack is just them lashing out at their new zombie drug being reported to US officials. Obviously not convinced, Frank heads off to meet Isabella at the meeting place. Uh-oh, though, she's getting attacked by a zombie! Even worse, she's already hurt. With the whole talking to Carlito thing going down the shitter, Frank carries a wounded Isabella back to the security room. Upon recovery, she enlightens our heroes. This is the real cause of the outbreak here in Willamette and what happened back in Santa Cabeza.
They were doing research on some sort of parasitic insect. Like a wasp. A wasp that turns living things into zombies. If you don't believe me, just ask the man who was in charge of that research. The head of the Santa Cabeza Livestock Research Facility, Dr. Barnaby.
Jesse!
It started! He's turning!
Whoa, hey there, Barnaby. We all want to get in that, but show some respect to the lady. A sick Barnaby begins violently spazzing out before breaking down, letting us know that, yes, he did create the zombies.
We accidentally made zombie livestock.
So the government's now in the zombie-making business. The whole story about the drug trade was a cover-up?
What do you know? We were trying to mass produce cattle. Do you have any idea how much meat Americans consume in a single day?
God, I love that this whole thing was started just because Americans eat too many cheeseburgers. Barnaby admits no real wrongdoing, seizes violently, and fucking dies. Isabella regales us with the story of what actually happened in her little village, POV being from Frank's camera because they want to hide Barnaby's zombification for some reason. Barnaby dies again, and Carlito begins talking about his last resort over the mall's PA, and that turns out to be a bunch of bombs that have been planted around the mall that, when detonated, will send the zombie parasites into the atmosphere, ensuring
complete global saturation.
The bombs are currently under the mall, and Carlito is already flooding the maintenance tunnels with gas to make the big ol' boom. Brad and Frank immediately head to the tunnels of Willamette to stop Carlito's mad plot. Now begins what many consider to be the worst mission in Dead Rising, which is combing through the maintenance tunnels to gather 5 bombs and leave before they detonate. This is complicated by the fact that the maintenance tunnels are packed butt to gut with zombies. Alongside that, there will be a crazy Latino man attempting to run you over with a truck. He's pretty easy to deal with, though. Frank gathers the bombs and runs them out of the tunnels while Brad pursues Carlito. The two get into a scuffle, with Carlito coming out on top and Brad well, shit out of luck. Frank reconvenes in the security room, a wave of relief washing over everyone since this nightmare is close to being over, but wanting to make sure Carlito didn't have any other shenanigans planned, Frank and Isabella head to Carlito's hideout to check out his computer. It's locked tight though, and it seems to be also jamming communication, preventing any messages from reaching the outside world. Frank leaves Isabella to try to figure out the password after Jesse requests his return to the security office. As it turns out, she spotted Carlito being dragged into the meat processing area of the mall by a massive man. I must remark here really quick. Jesus, this mall is insane. A meat processing facility, a park, a supermarket, 4 plazas loaded with stores, and a food court to boot. Is there any mall out there that's genuinely this insane? Mall of America? I have no idea. But we're off to save Carlito from a grisly fate and hopefully acquire the password to his computer. You face off against Larry Cheong, a butcher gone demented, now seeing humans as good meat and zombies as bad meat. Frank catches him just as he's about to start butchering Carlito and a fight ensues. With Larry dead, Frank speaks to a dying Carlito. Carlito cries out in anguish over failing his goal at getting revenge for Santa Cabeza. Frank of course chastises him for causing this outbreak, but he promises he will tell the Santa Cabeza story. With his dying breaths, Carlito says this isn't over and hands over his necklace to Frank to give to Isabella, of course. Which he does, and thankfully this gets her old noggin jogging, and she gets the password to Carlito's computer correct. And now we transition into the endgame of Dead Rising. I should mention here that Dead Rising actually has 7 unique endings, which can actually affect who survives. For instance, Brad can survive if you acquire ending B, but I want to keep to canon, so we're going to talk about ending A into ending S. With the jammer down, Jessie is finally able to contact HQ, who informs her that the US government is simply going to deny any knowledge of what's happened to Willamette, and will be sending the kill squads in by nightfall to deal with everyone, which they promptly do. The death squads promptly roll in, terminating every zombie they run across, and this is reflected in the game by the massive amount of dead zombies that now populate the mall. Well, more dead. You also get a brief peek at the leader of these special forces in Brock Mason, the same man that carried out the termination mission in Santa Cabeza. With the zombies severely depopulated, these special forces guys are your very late game enemies. They're all pretty bulky, use high-powered assault rifles to attack you, and even have these little drones that fly around and put out a piercing alarm that alerts all nearby soldiers to your location. These guys are really annoying, I won't lie, but all fall to the mighty mini chainsaw. They at least try to offer Jessie an out in exchange for her silence. She opts for their silence instead. I'm sorry. I love you. Brad and Jesse dead. This leaves only Frank and Isabella in the mall now. If you were curious about Otis though, he steals a Special Forces helicopter and gets the fuck out of Dodge during the chaos of the Special Forces' arrival. You evade capture for another day and you head to the helipad to meet Ed for your ride out of Willamette. Well, fuck. I guess that's it. Frank just kind of gives up and waits to die. Isabella, however, saves him and the game's overtime mode is unlocked. An additional 24 hours with the game's true ending. After collapsing on the helipad, Frank is brought back to Carlito's hideout by Isabella, who informs him that he's infected. When did that happen? Not sure. As for why he hasn't turned already, well, apparently the infection takes everybody at a different pace. This disheartens Frank, of course, but Isabella posits that she could make a drug that could impede the infection's process, and so she sends you on a fetch quest to collect things she needs for that drug. And then she sends you on another fetch quest to collect 10 queens, which honestly I think this is the more annoying mission than the bomb one. At least the bombs didn't take up an inventory space. Frank and Isabella also discover via Carlito's computer that Carlito has infected 50 different orphans with the zombie parasite, and has sent them all across the USA to potentially eventually start a worldwide zombie outbreak. Anyway, you do all that and Isabella successfully synthesizes the drug and it works, but they're still stuck in Willamette for now. Until Frank discovers an exit that was unearthed when Ed's helicopter crashed into the park. The tunnel is full of zombies, but Isabella creates Repel, which should keep the zombies off of the both of you as you escape. The two begin a daring escape through these strange underground tunnels, eventually escaping outside where they steal a military jeep. Unfortunately, they drive right into a tank. Honestly, I'd completely forgotten Dead Rising had a little turret segment. You use your machine gun to somehow blast through the armor of the tank in a segment that I really think drags on for way too long. End of the battle, Brock takes manual control of the tank and he just fucking rams you, sending the heroes tumbling. After a brief back and forth between the commando and journalist, Frank hops up onto the tank for the final battle. You go mono-e-mono with Brock, nothing but fists to settle this one. A hard battle for certain, but not terribly so, because by this point, Frank should have a full-on devastating arsenal of hand-to-hand techniques available. You beat Brock down and he does a super dramatic slow fall into a horde of zombies, being torn apart subsequently. After such a dramatic scene, Frank stares up at the sky and the game cuts to the credits. After that, though, you get a text summary to wrap the game up. Frank breaks the Willamette and Santa Cabeza stories to the world, forcing the US government to at least accept partial responsibility in the livestock breeding program that created the zombies in the first place, but they still deny fault in the Willamette incident, blaming terrorists instead. Time grinds on and the people of the world slowly put the horrifying incident of Willamette behind them as the news saturates their brains with more stories and horrifying incidents around the world. Dead Rising closes on a modified quote from the nursery rhyme Robin the Bobbin, and yet he complained that his belly was not full. A succinct quote to sum up the story of Dead Rising and, well, the world in general these days. And that's Dead Rising. Honestly, my favorite zombie game of all time. At the time of its release, there was really nothing like it, and honestly, I still don't know any games that are like it, barring the game's sequels, of course. It's an incredibly fun open-world sandbox, where the only limit to how much fun you can have is your imagination. For killing, I mean. Is it flawless? No, of course not. The shooting mechanics are super stiff, and the survivor AI could be generously described as mentally disabled, creating some very frustrating moments. But I can look past those flaws because this game is just so fun. It's incredibly well constructed, the survival mechanics are great, you really feel more powerful as you level up, and it's amazing to just pick up random stuff and see how much damage you can do to the zombies with it. The story is a fun, campy adventure with the tone of a schlocky B-movie, with the atmosphere only being enhanced by the super duper over-the-top psychopaths. Not to mention the insane amount of detail that was put into this game. Just the tiny little systems that, while you might not notice them on a first run, you pick them up on subsequent playthroughs and are amazed by. I hope with the deluxe remaster that a whole new generation can experience the fun of Dead Rising, and that it only improves on this flawed diamond of a video game. But this video's gotta end now. As always, dear viewers, my name is HadesManticore. This here channel is CityStateManticore. Thanks a ton for watching if you did. Be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment on how much you love Dead Rising below, and be sure to subscribe since, as always, there's more content to come. And I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.